And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That's right, it is time for Coffee Talk Live. You can find me at Coffee Talk Live, as well as at Prep University on YouTube, simultaneously broadcasting Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, if you are so inclined as to join me there. Also, fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon as we get ready to jump into what is going on in the world today, taking a look at some snippets from the news and having a little bit of discussion. And as always, I do try to read through as many of the comments as is reasonable for those of you who are listening and not able to see, so that you can keep up. And joined today by Miss Kitty in the chair. Haven't seen her back there for a while. Miss Kitty is in the chair and Dusty is on the floor because she can't get in the chair. Of course, the felines who keep me company here. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in today. I see Donna Beaver is here, reminding people thumbs up, like, and share. Yes, please do if you don't mind. Helter is here. Dragon is here. Boogers made it today, as well as Brian, and they have chosen to say hello thus far. I know there's some other people out there, but they don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything. That's all there is to it. But anyways, and I see Megan is here as well. Thanks for joining us today, Megan. Glad you could make it as we get ready to unravel our crazy world with some of the things that are going on in the news. And as I alluded to, have a little bit of discussion. We do this most of the time as sarcastically as possible because a lot of what I see in the media is absolutely ridiculous. The people in the world are crazy, and the people who present the media to us think we're all morons. And I see Carrick has joined us here today. And it's something I want to open up from yesterday, if I, and that was oh God, what's the name of that woman, if I can even remember? Dulce Sloan from MSNBC, who pissed everybody off talking about Beyonce. I just want to run that over real quick and then we'll move on, because something else occurred to me after we had talked about it. So I just wanted to touch on it. It lags, and yeah, I already got a connection warning there, which shouldn't happen for sharing a screen. Shouldn't happen. State of the Union article. This is the same article we saw yesterday. MSNBC guest sparks controversy with claim about white people, and there she is with her straightened hair and her blush, because all black people have rosy cheeks, don't they? Yeah. It says, guest claim white people have stolen every form of music except for classical from black people. And this is in response to Beyonce's so-called country song. Daily Show correspondent Dulce Sloan argued in response to critics of Beyonce making a country album that if white people didn't have created rock, jazz, blues, country, or pop, as they were all stolen from black people, which is ridiculous. But the thing of it is, and I pointed it out, the problem with Beyonce's, it's not even an album, it's like a song, right? The problem is it's not good. It's not good, but it's been blown up by the media because of who Beyonce is. Her clout as being Beyonce was enough to push this. If anyone else did it, it wouldn't chart, because it's not a good song. It's not good music. Putting on a country hat doesn't make it a country song, or putting on a cowboy hat, I should say. I should rephrase that. And it occurred to me after that, she accuses white people of stealing all forms of music except for classical. And if you really want to go down that road, okay, if you really want to take that angle, it's something I thought, it occurred to me after the broadcast yesterday. And so I just wanted to share this really quickly. All forms of modern music are adapted from classical. Even the count, even the rhythm count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Anyone ever take music? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. That's from classical music. It originated with it. So the rhythms and tempos of all major music, from hip hop to metal, have its origins in classical. So who's misappropriating what? Can't we just enjoy the music? Do you have to make it about that? And if she wants to defend Beyonce, find a different way to do it. The song's just not good. That's what people are complaining about, not the fact that she's of color. I don't think most people give a damn about that. As I catch up some more comments here, I see Spectre has joined us, as well as Puck. He says they can't comment until they get their YouTube confirmation. Okay, really? And Brian says, didn't this dumb person honor the Black Panther at the Super Bowl like 10 years ago? I don't remember. But I wouldn't be surprised. Miss Kitty, you're leaving? I must be disturbing her. See you, Miss Kitty. Miss Kitty has left the building. Cruising says the scales used in metal are almost identical to classical, especially synth rock. And then Unknown says, well, today's getting rough for me. Hope you're all having a better day than me. Well, hope whatever's going on, it gets better for you, Unknown knows. I know we all have our bumps in life. I totally empathize. But that occurred to me yesterday after the fact, because you can beat this to death. And we've talked about it enough. I heard the so-called country song a few weeks back. And I mean, she's not that bright, or she thinks everybody else isn't that bright, or who, maybe she believes this stuff. Maybe she actually believes it, that white people steal everything. Can't we just share the music? It's just like with the hairstyle bits. Oh, braiding. Oh, your cultural misappropriation because of braiding. All cultures have braided their hair throughout all of known history, no matter where they were from. They've all done that. You can't sit there and say hair braiding is exclusive. It doesn't make sense. And then I look at her, and like I said, she's got eyeshadow. She's got blush on her makeup. She's wearing false eyelashes. That could be construed as cultural misappropriation. But no one says anything about that. Who cares? Who cares? Can't you just live your lives? No, they can't. People cannot just live their lives. They've got to try to take something from you. Can't live their lives without trying to step on somebody's neck. Unbelievable. You don't have to help them up off the ground, but you could at least step over them. You don't have to step on them. Come on. Give us a break. Give us a break. Cruising says it's like braiding your hair was a great way to deal with it before you could easily cut it and before you had elastic bands to hold it. Yeah, I mean, it's just, and you've got so much of it. It keeps growing. You could be decorative with it. All cultures have done this. All cultures have done it. And Puck makes a crack about mayonnaise there. Is that the case? Should they use Nutella? I don't know. Mayonnaise sandwiches. Yucko. Yucko. Who's ever had a peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich? Have you ever heard of such a thing? I saw a vintage ad from Hellman's, or no, Miracle Whip. Miracle Whip suggesting peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches. Doesn't seem like it would go together to me. And we're going to jump. Oh, and Dusty took her place in the chair because Miss Kitty is gone. You were waiting for that, weren't you? She was laying down there waiting for an opportunity to take that spot in that chair. I got to tell you, that's the way these cats are. They're incredible. Now, we all know what happened in October in Israel, in the Hamas attack, okay? And they attacked the Nova Festival, right? And some odd things have been happening since then. And I just wanted to touch on that with this article. And a couple more comments here really quickly. Cruising says, is it a coincidence the rise of Beyonce coincides with the decline in public school performances? I think not. Yeah, no kidding. Because their stuff is brainless. You listen to the lyrics, read the lyrics on a Beyonce song. The old Dick and Jane books had more context. And Megan says their dad used to eat peanut butter and jelly and mayonnaise. Woo! I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I'm not a big fan of mayonnaise. I knew an old woman once when in the 80s that would eat mayonnaise out of a jar with a spoon. I don't know about that, but I'm just saying. And Monkey is here, as well as Eric Peter says women in Vikings and Valkyries always braided their hair. Yeah, it's well established. If anybody wants to bother to look at any of the history, which most people don't, and people like this Dulce woman are counting on the fact that the majority of people that are listening to her, they're not going to bother to research anything. They'll believe her if they want to. And Unknown actually loves peanut butter. I love mayo, not mixing them. Yeah, that's as bad as pineapple on pizza. Okay. But we're going to, Metro article, and we're going to discuss something about the Nova Festival or survivors of the Nova Festival. Some interesting for me as far as opening things up like this. And I will pause the recording. I'm trying. There's a news article here, and I don't want to see it. I just want to read this. It says it will have killed themselves after surviving the Nova Festival attack. All right. A survivor of the Nova Festival massacre has claimed that more than 50 people who were also there have committed suicide in the months after. I've heard this. Guy Ben Shimon told a parliamentary affairs meeting that the true number could now be much higher as survivors struggle. A week-long supernova Sukkot gathering in a forest clearing near Kibbutz Re'im, 3 miles from the Gaza border, ended with hundreds dead after Hamas fighters stormed the event. Attendees at the festival, billed as a celebration of friends, love, and infinite freedom, hid under bullet-ridden vehicles as motorcycle-riding militants bottlenecked fleeing cars. Mr. Shimon said, I don't know if everyone knows, but there are close to 50 suicides among people from the Nova Party, and there are many more who have been forcibly hospitalized. I have lots of friends who don't get out of bed now. I still cannot get out. I brought a little dog to simply get me going around the house. She's the one who's making sure I can function at the moment. All right. This is the thing this is a very, very interesting point about this. And I think it's something that a lot of people do not realize about. And Cruising says, sounds like mass survivor guilt. Also, and I'm going to be mean here, think about the kind of people we're talking about. The Nova Festival is the equivalent of Burning Man. Look at what they go there to do. Okay? Friends, love, and infinite freedom. This is not a religious festival. These are not religious people. They hold it out there near the Gaza, and Hamas saw it as a weak link to access Israel because it's full of weak people. Sorry, that's who these people are. These are your millennials who, love and peace and freedom and no boundaries of religion and all this other stuff. That's the type of people that go to these types of festivals. And I've never seen in history where survivors of a mass incident like that were so shook up they all want to kill themselves afterwards. So we have more than 50 people having committed suicide, and who knows how many more that are institutionalized currently to keep them on watch. It's kind of suspicious to me. Unknown, where are we here? Unknown says, imagine Red Dawn dropping into a rave while everyone is high, meth, weed, and etc. Exactly. Because that's what it is. Like I said, the American equivalent is Burning Man, which is, Burning Man, by the way, is run by Google. I don't know if anybody knew that. Google founded Burning Man. Dragon says, maybe these survivors knew too much and were silent, so they can't reveal what really happened and who really killed the majority of concert goers. I don't know. And Puck says, what's strange is the fact that they open carry in most of Israel. Good point about the festivals. Yeah, but not here. Inside Israel, but not here, because it's peace and love and kumbaya, and can't we all just be friends? And all religions lead to God and all of that. So yeah, they were the weak link. And during the festival, they saw their opportunity and they moved in. And Sven says they let themselves be disarmed. I went into a restaurant in Israel in the 90s and a mom or two had an MP5 on her. Yeah, you don't screw around inside Israel. But this place is a different matter altogether. And I think a lot of people are not aware of the types of people that go to those festivals or that live in that area. And Fluke Man has joined us. Glad you could make it today, Fluke Man. And I always regard it as being a very weak and selfish thing to take your own life, because you're burdening everyone else around you because you can't cope. Just my opinion of it. But that's a story. Another story you may not have seen is something talking about dear old, sweet old, lovable old, reliable old second term Joe. 81 million votes, folks. It'll be 190 million this time. It's going to break the world record. Sweet old Uncle Joe. I thought a New York Post article talking about Biden's cheat sheet. He's been caught with yet another cheat sheet. Let me just make sure. Let me try to open this article all up so that it doesn't freeze, because I don't need the video to play. I think when there's a video in it, it messes me up. So, and Gary Edwards is here. He says he's there, got the announcement. Excellent. And Puck says it's odd that Hamas was able to parachute in on riding mowers, but Israel shot down all of Iran's drones and missiles. Well, those were coming from a lot further away. You had more time to think about it. Sven says your kids will run on bent frames the rest of their lives as a result of a suicided parent. Yeah. Or anyone else. And Gary says I'm breaking up intermittently. Yeah, I do apologize for that. And I don't know if it's ScrewTube or if it's Restream, because again, I use Ethernet. I'm hardlined. There's no Bluetooth. I don't use article. Dear old Uncle Joe, New York Post article, Biden cheat sheets for Iraq PM meeting caught on camera, including instructions on when to pause. That's right. Press caught once again wielding a crib sheet bearing scripted remarks to the press during Oval Office sit-down with Iraq's Prime Minister on Monday. By 81 turned to the script, which included an all-caps stage direction on when to pause in his comments to allow for an interpreter to translate. first public statement since Iran launched an unprecedented direct missile and drone attack on Israel over the weekend. The president glanced down at his script repeatedly as he sat beside Iraq Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani. Al-Sudani did not rely on note cards of any kind when he made brief remarks following Biden. Of course not. So he reaches into his pocket here and pulls this card out. Now, this is a picture. For those of you who can see, he pulls this card out of his pocket when he sits down. And naturally, they closed up on it. And here it is. And it tells him where to look, where to turn, what to say, and when to pause to allow for translation and to allow the other guy to speak. I have never seen a president this bad. I've seen them use note cards, you know, the little 3x5s, not like a billboard like he's carrying in his pocket here, because this piece of paper is a lot bigger than 3x5. I've seen people use teleprompters. His teleprompters are gigantic in comparison to normal ones. But for something like this, that's just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. Sven says we are just not a serious country. Biden talking encourages our enemies. And then Flukeman says, I knew for a few people who were a burden to those around them, but believed everyone in society would be lost without them. And Gary says Biden follows the prompts. Barely. He's got it all written down there and still screws it up. He can't even follow the directions. I'd hate to see this guy bake a cake. Yeah, and Helter says they forgot to write you don't turn over this list and don't show it to the cameras. Exactly. He had it in his pocket backwards and pulled it out, and they caught it. And, of course, that just opens them up for more ridicule, more embarrassment, and by default, embarrassing everyone else. Because it's like, okay, this is our sitting president, and, you know, the rest of the world looks at this and says, wow, you morons voted for this? I didn't, but... it's like the crane and the crows, the old Aesop's story, birds of a feather. Joshua says they never take seriously the words that someone reads from a card or teleprompter. It's fake and repulsive. And Puck says, and love the children jumping on my lap, Joe Biden. I don't think that's written there. Brian says, Urban Dictionary suicide definition, saying to God, you can't fire me because I quit. Really? I quit. And Dragon says, I won't be surprised if they also wrote you breathe in, you breathe out. And Monkey suspects the media might say it's an AI image. AI image. Yeah, well, it's kind of no fake. And yeah. And you make that, sometimes you got to wonder with some of the stuff that you see nowadays, was it AI? Is that real? It's like that that meme that's been circulating showing the two that are like 4 years old, they look to be, and one is dressed as an Israeli and one is dressed as a Palestinian, and they're kneeling down and holding hands. It's AI generated. It's not a real photograph at all. If you've seen that, it's not real. It's not real. But yeah, just our president embarrassing us again. That's all. At least he remembered that the card was even there. But can you imagine if he didn't and he just talked off the cuff? That would have been something. I would have liked to have seen that. I think I would have enjoyed that if he just talked off the cuff and just blithered on. Flukeman says they used to believe Biden was faking it, but it has come too far for him to be acting. And then Gary Edwards said Biden was the least odious Democratic candidate for the two-party scam. And Puck says, I'd love for someone to intercept and modify that card before he gets it. Yeah, and then that would be, oh, what is the name of that movie with Will Ferrell where he's the newscaster? You know the one I'm talking about? And he gets fired because someone altered his teleprompter and he cussed live on the air because they found out that he will literally read anything it says without thinking about it. What was the name of that movie? Somebody tell me. Monkey says they're saying watch the mainstream media spin that card image around and say it's an AI image. They might. They might. We have to wait and see what happens. We have to wait and see what happens. You never know. They may try to cover for him. They may try to cover for him. But we're going to trickle down into more political corruption, more graft, more money changing hands behind the scenes. And people are reminding me here now it's Anchorman, correct? Anchorman, and there were 2 of those films. The first one was better. The second one I could do without. But yes, Anchorman, thank you, everybody. I couldn't think of the name of it, but I remember the scene. I remember the scene where they were like, hey, he'll read anything that thing says. He doesn't actually pay attention. Yes, it was Anchorman. That was the film. We're going to jump to New York for District Attorney Alvin Bragg, because something has been discovered about Alvin Bragg. And Alvin Bragg, you might remember, is the DA that is one of the DAs chasing down. Eric says, off subject, I want to thank you for what you do and for the cats. It's a noble responsibility to take on. Well, thank you, Eric. Yeah, and we enjoy taking care of the animals. We do. We've had the occasional dog, but it's mostly cats that we find dumped out here. Like poor Dusty there sleeping in the chair. And yeah, we go out on a limb to help them. We work with a local shelter. For example, they give us vouchers for spaying and neutering, things like that. And I am live. I just got my notification. It's 27 minutes and 42 seconds in. I got my prompt that I am live. 27 minutes and 42 seconds. Thank you, YouTube, for letting me know. But yeah, again, much appreciated, Eric. We do our best. We do our best to try to help them out, rehome them if it's possible, and we do that through the shelter, so they select people. We're not just giving away cats and all of that. And Puck says, everyone knows that the Obama team is writing Biden's cue cards. Yeah, exactly. And Gary says, I freeze framed for 20 seconds. Did I? Could you still hear me? Is anyone else seeing that, or is it just Gary Edwards? As we get ready to jump to New York here. And hopefully this won't screw up on me. New York Post article. The district attorney, Alvin Bragg, is in on the Trump indictment. So hopefully this will open up properly. Much of a headache. Soft on crime, DA collected $850,000 in campaign donations after the Trump indictment. Manhattan attorney Alvin Bragg collected a cool $850,000 in donations after indicting former President Trump's March, with powerful Democrats and left-leaning labor unions cheering on the prosecution with their wallets to recent records. In the most recent campaign filing period, Bragg's re-election campaign received $481,203 in donations from July 12th through January 12th, 100,000 more than the $374,785 raised during the prior 6-month period. The Political Action Committee of State Assembly Speaker Carl Hiersty, a Bronx Democrat who has been criticized for championing soft on crime policies such as the cashless bail law, gave $1,000. I don't care about that. Democratic allied unions also showed Bragg's campaign with donations, including $15,000 from the New York Hotel Trades Council, $5,000 apiece from the United Federation of Teachers, and the local 32BJ, representing building work, 100 from the bricklayers and allied craft workers, 1,500 from New York NYS Nurses Association. I don't think unions should be making political donations at all to any candidate, personally. A first-term incumbent, Bragg, a Democrat, is up for re-election next year, had a cash balance of $833,819 in his campaign kitty, a haul first reposted by Newsweek on Monday. So basically, he does the Trump indictment, and then literally within the next few weeks pulls damn near $1 million in donations from various unions around New York and other Democratic donors. Anybody suspicious about that? Just asking. Just asking. And Puck says they were chanting 4 more years when Trump visited the bodega in Harlem, and that Bragg and the donors should be arrested. Fluke Man wants to know what's the internet speed. Do you test the speed? Think the speed power of the computer can affect the performance. I've tested it before. It should be pretty good, and I'm on 1080p also. But the last time I checked the speed, it was at the right speed. Monkey says that is where Trump and his lawyers has a reason to ask for a different judge entirely, since the judge is influenced. And Helter said, follow the money. There's more money hidden under Bragg's rug. Absolutely. Absolutely there is. I just think that's a really interesting donation. And it goes on to continue to name where money came from in this article and who made donations. So, yeah, that's suspect. That's really suspect. It sounds to me like maybe behind the scenes, Bragg was approached. Hey, you push this indictment through, and we'll show you campaign donations. We'll take good care of you, Bragg. And he has been $850,000 in donations and counting. And counting, and he's only a first-term incumbent, they said. So he's never done this before. Indicts Trump, and I believe this is the indictment for the hush money, correct? Which is unprecedented. Again, we've talked about this several times. No one has ever had to go to court for that before. This is the first time anybody's ever been brought into court for alleged hush money, because it's legal. It's legal. It can be done. That's what's quoted here, according to D'Amato. Bragg is known as the DA in the country who is taking on Trump. He's doing all he can to get publicity for bringing the case. He's solidifying his political base in New York by going after Trump. The whole thing is political, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Bragg's campaign insisted it did not do any serious fundraising until June of last year and did not promote the Trump case. Yeah, sure it didn't. Of course it promoted the Trump case. It's all he's got. I bet you Bragg hasn't done one damn thing other than this case. What has he done? What is he known for? And then Monkey says, yeah, yup, all because, of course. All because of the hush money. And we're supposed to trust these people. We're supposed to trust these people. I think not. And then Puck says, you'll never get a fair trial in the Soviet Republic of New York. Can you get a fair trial anywhere if you can't afford one? Can you get a fair trial anywhere? Anybody ever been to court and felt like they got a fair trial? And then Monkey said, yeah, Trump is screwed since the whole court is literally against him, even the judge himself. And it's completely biased. It's completely biased. And Cruising says Trump should have never paid. He should have ran going full truth on it. Yeah, I paid to bang the woman you perverts could only dream about. Had the wife's blessing and permission. Good to be rich. Well, you know, people only like to think about stuff like that in terms of where it applies to themselves. Oh, well, you know, I made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But if someone like that makes mistakes, they want to shoot him in the back. It's as simple as that. And that's what Fluke Man says here, that unfortunately not every situation ends like the 12 Angry Men. Yeah, 12 Angry Men is how a jury trial should go. It is not how it works, though. You got indifferent people who are forced to come who don't give a shit about the trial. And they'll do anything to get out of there, even bury somebody who doesn't deserve it. And Andrew is here. Glad you could make it today. Thanks for joining us, Andrew. But that's it's a major problem. And it's not just with Trump. It's just really obvious with Trump because of who he is and because every move he makes is all over the media. And so we can all see it and watch it. But anybody, again, who's been to court and felt like they got the runaround can identify with this. They can identify with it. They know how it feels. They know exactly what that feels. But, you know, that sort of thing, it doesn't end. It doesn't end with Bragg. It doesn't end with Bragg because we have the same problem going on with the mayor of Washington, D.C. Mayor of Washington, D.C. Misappropriation. Or it seems that way. It seems that way. The mayor of D.C. wants to take a trip to the Masters tournament and have the taxpayers pay for it, and is being called out for it. And we've talked about that's Muriel Bowser, I believe, as I get the article ready here, and it's a DC News Now article. And then Fluke Man says, didn't all the left wing love Trump before he announced to run for the 2016 election? Yes. Everybody loved him. Going back decades, he was the man. Everybody loved him. And when he announced he was going to run for president, they all on him. Now, yeah. Sorry, folks. And I see Lady Pop is here. Thanks for joining us. And Gary Edwards quotes Marathon Man. Is it secret? Is it safe? No, is it secret? Is it safe? Is Lord of the Rings. So DC News Now exclusive. DC Mayor Bowser attends tournament and the travel to be paid for by the taxpayers. That's right. DC taxpayers are going to pay for her to go to the Masters tournament. Mayor Muriel Bowser attended the Masters tournament to Georgia over the weekend, and municipal money was used for expenses, according to a spokeswoman for the mayor. According to the mayor's schedule sent to media outlets on Saturday, Mayor Bowser will travel to Georgia as part of a sports and economic development. In a phone call Monday afternoon, Balson's director Susana Castillo said the mayor attended the Masters after she was invited by two people spearheading a new city task force, quote, to revitalize the Gallery Place and Chinatown neighborhood. Castillo said Bowser accepted an invite to attend the golf tournament by chairs of task force to shape future of Gallery Place Chinatown Neighborhood Commission. Good Lord. I hate those long names. Jody McLean and Deborah Ratner Salzberg. When asked why the mayor needed to travel to Augusta, nearly 500 miles from D.C. as flies, Castillo said, whether it's here, in the city, or another city, the mayor is willing to advance administrative interests no matter the setting. D.C. News Castillo how the mayor paid to visit Georgia Saturday, He said city funds were used for flights, but did not specify the cost. Hold still. Good, the costs. And that they would have to file a Freedom of Information Act request if they wanted to find out. And Flukeman's still talking about Trump. It says Trump was in Home Alone 2. They wouldn't allow him to go on TV now, even if he paid them. And funny enough, Macaulay Culkin put in a request that any future pressings of Home Alone 2 delete that scene from the film. And Gary Edwards is thinking of the wrong Bowser. This is not the Bowser from Sha Na Na. This is Bowser, the mayor of the District of Columbia, who used taxpayer funds for her trip to the Masters in Atlanta, Georgia, that she could to do something as part of a sports and development visit. Sports and economic development visit. Is she bringing any sports or economic development to the District of Columbia by attending a Masters tournament? No, she is not. She got an invitation. She wanted to go, didn't want to pay for it herself, found a loophole to get the taxpayer to foot the bill. That's what happened. That's what happened here. And when asked how much all of that cost, they were told that they would have to file a Freedom of Information Act request. And by the time they get that, no one will care. Dragon says Muriel Bowser routinely acts as a bad leader. She knew that this time anyone might care about a junket to hang out with her favorite mega developers at the Masters. And Helter said, pay no attention to the 500 million cuts to services for DC residents, but $500 million for her sports team owning friends and a junket to a golf match of she's got a lot of money for that. Yeah. I don't know how much was paid. I don't know how much it cost for her to travel out there. I'm sure she didn't fly coach. But it's certainly something that she could have afforded herself if she wanted to go. But she put it on the taxpayers, found a way to charge it. She made it look like a business meeting was taking place or something like that, so she could write it off and put it on the taxpayer. It happened. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that that's the direction that we have to go in. And it's a shame because, again, that's your tax. That's your money. That's your money that's being paid. Your tax money. And it's easy to spend someone else's money. Like I say all the time, it's really easy to spend someone else's money. It shouldn't be, but it is. You should be a good steward of other people's money, especially when it's taken from them by force, like tax money is. We have no choice. We have no choice in the matter. It comes right out of our check or right out of our bank. We have no say in it and no say in how it's spent. And these lawmakers are supposed to be good stewards of that. And they're not. And voting them out doesn't work. Voting them out doesn't work. You get rid of one and you get another one that's just as bad or worse, because the system is rigged. It's rigged against us. It's a system that does not work for us. They tell us it does. Of the people, by the people, for the people is the way that used to be described. Of the people, by the people, for the people. But it sure as hell doesn't feel that way, does it? Doesn't look that way at all. Looks like we're getting the wool pulled over our return. And there's really not much that can be done about it. And if you try to fight back, they crush you. Trucker strike in Canada. It seemed like it was working, but it eventually got ground down. They eventually got crushed. Anyone who was helping them was penalized. The truckers were penalized. Their bank accounts were frozen. The tow truck companies were threatened to get them to cooperate. Canada behaved as a dictatorship. And because they were crushed, all of the other places where trucker strikes were being attempted, they folded. They gave up. They gave up trying because they were afraid. And I understand that. There's a lot to be afraid of. Flukeman says some governments even tax you if you have properties, money, and etc. in other countries. Yeah. And Sven says, don't they just say the Masters is racist? Or I don't know. I don't know. I've heard it said that golf courses are racist. But because we Fox News article, Denver Mayo boasts shared sacrifices required to make the city welcoming for migrants. So Denver wants its people to sacrifice themselves further for the migrant crisis. We have to sacrifice. We all have to give up. I bet you Mayor Mike Johnson isn't sacrificing much of himself or of his own. Denver Democratic Mayor Mike Johnson conceded that there would be shared sacrifice to reach the sanctuary city's goal of welcoming place for illegal immigrants. The mayor's remarks came during a CNBC interview for its Cities of Success series that aired on April 11th and was originally filmed in February. I don't think it's a city of success. It's really in a lot of trouble. Around 40,000 migrants have arrived in Denver since last year, primarily from Texas. Stop. That's not entirely true. It's now been determined that many of them were flown in under the Biden administration's free airfare pass. We talked about that a few weeks ago. Probably more of them were flown in from God knows where than were bussed in by the governor of Texas. The surge has strained city resources and forced Johnson to cut millions from the budget in order to accommodate the migrants. In the recent CNBC interview, host Carl Quintanilla asked Johnson to respond to residents who are angered by Denver's generous sanctuary city policy. Johnson defended Denver's policy as balanced approach to dealing with the crisis without having any federal aid. It's a balance. We want to be a welcoming city, Johnson began. Oh, please. How about you be welcoming to your citizens? He explained how he did not want migrant families to be left out in the cold on the streets, but he also wanted to provide high quality public services for taxpayers. Sure, it doesn't feel that way. In this context, without any support to do both of those things, it requires shared sacrifice, it requires compromise. I got an idea. Why don't you put some of them up in the governor's mansion? So we are both making cuts to city budgets to meet this financial need, and we are making cuts to the amount of services we can provide to the migrants that arrive and to the number of folks that we can serve, he continued. In March, city officials pleaded with property owners to house migrants after it scaled back some of its migrant services to reduce the budget deficit. And I hope anybody who might be watching from Colorado does not do that. Do not let these people into your home. They will destroy it. I don't care if the city gives you a kickback for it, because the only way they can make this work is if they pay people to do it. They'll still wreck your property. That's a terrible idea. Mayor Johnson announced last week that nearly $46 million would be slashed from the budget to help fund a $90 million package funding migrant aid and housing for the rest of the year. The mayor's office is taking the biggest cut at 9.6. What are they cutting from the mayor's office, though? Followed by a 6.1% cut from the Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency Department. They don't need the money, but I think that 6.1 is probably the smallest cut that's going to be made from any department. And these other ones, they won't tell you. It says there were also several other reported cuts from the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, City Attorney's Office, Sheriff's Department, Police Department, and Public Library. I bet you those institutions are getting the biggest hits. Johnson previously predicted the crisis would cost the city around $180 million in 2024. Well, you're the one that wanted sanctuary city status, and this is what happens. You can blame the governor of Texas if you want to, but your policies allowed for yourself to be set up for this. And many of the people that are in Denver flew in there, and not because of the governor of Texas, because of Biden and his administration. They're the ones that gave away the free plane tickets. They're the ones that did that. You can blame Abbott if you want. And we'll see if we can catch up some of the comments here. Or try to. T. Kane says, another reason I don't vote here in Australia, even though it's forced. That's true. And a lot of people aren't aware of that. Voting in Australia is compulsory. Politicians get caught flying around and eating out, hosting parties on the taxpayer dollar, calling it business. And yeah, I don't think you should be forced to vote. It should be if it's a privilege to vote, it should be a privilege not to. And forcing you to choose between the lesser of two evils, that's not fair. That's really not fair. And Helter says, send them to Mike Johnson's house. I'm sure they'd love some hot chocolate. It's cold outside. Yeah, put them up in your house, Mike. And I bet you the biggest hits. I mean, yeah, they took 6.1% from their diversity programs or whatever, sustainability and bullshit, and nobody cares about them. But the biggest hits are going to be to law enforcement, fire department, water and sewage, public libraries, the sheriff's office. They're taking a lot of hits. It's being bad. And Unknown says they'd be inclined to not vote if they were forced. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it either. You have to pay. You have to pay something, don't you? Don't you get fined for not voting if you don't have an excuse not to? Certain times they'll allow for an excuse, but otherwise there's a financial penalty. Correct? Correct, T. Kane, if you want to elaborate on that a little bit. And then Megan says Monkey Works shows the incoming migrant flights. They frequently come from Europe. Yeah, and on the taxpayer dime, we're paying for that. We are paying for them to be flown into these places, into sanctuary cities and others. So it's not just buses coming from Texas. They all want to blame the governor of Texas, but nobody wants to sit there and say, hey, wait a minute. The executive branch of the government has been using taxpayer dollars to buy tickets and give them away to fly them into our cities too. Nobody wants to look at that. Nobody wants to blame them. And part of the reason that they don't want to blame them is part of the reason why Johnson's not going to blame them, or the governor of New York or anybody else, is because they're still begging the federal government for tax dollars to fund this migrant industrial complex. So if they attack Biden and say, you bastard, you flew 20,000 migrants into my city and we can't afford it, they can't turn around on that same token and say, oh, by the way, yeah, if you could send us some more federal tax dollars, that'd be great. That'd be great. I would love that. And Megan wonders if Garda World is running the immigrant camps in Denver. I have no idea who's running those camps out there. I mean, we could look it up, but I don't know who's running it. I know that it's huge money. It's huge money. And that's why I call it a migrant industrial complex. All of these contracts that have been handed out for the so-called migrant crisis have been no-bid contracts, which is unheard of in any city government. Unless there's an emergency, like if a hurricane came through and you've got to get the power back up, you just take what you can get. You don't have time to bid. This is something they had time to bid for. Even a couple of days of worth of bids to save the taxpayers some money. And to me, that's all very suspicious. Billions of dollars worth of no-bid contracts feeding into these companies that are way overcharging for their services. And they know that they are. And they're not going to be held accountable. And Kane emphasizes, they said, yeah, they fine you, but I just say it goes against religious beliefs. That works? Or do they ask you to validate your religion so that they can compare it? And then Megan says supposedly they had a $40 million contract with Garda World, but people tried to block it. And T. Kane says they auto sign you up every election. Yeah, I'm not surprised, because that's an automatic system that you're seeing. They're trying to get to that point in the United States. It's been floated a few times, compulsory voting, to try to force Americans to vote. And, you know, again, as much as it may be considered a privilege to vote, it's a privilege to not vote if you don't like any of the choices. There's none of the above on the ballot, as far as I know, because none of the above would probably win if that was the case. And many of the states, if not all the states in the U.S. now, will sign you up or register you to vote if you go to the DMV without your knowledge or consent. And getting off of that is very difficult. I've talked about that before, because my wife was automatically registered when she renewed her license in Georgia. And there's a process where you're supposed to unregister yourself. It doesn't work. She tried for months and kept getting redirected to different agencies. You got to call this person. You got to go to that office. She couldn't get them to take her off, ultimately. And Brian made a $10 donation to the channel. Thank you, Brian. He says, you are cool. Well, I appreciate it. Somebody thinks I am. Anyways, with that, we are at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and sign off. Again, this is Coffee Talk, or at Coffee Talk Live, or at Prepper University on YouTube, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Special thanks again to Brian for making a donation to the channel. Much appreciated. As well as everyone else for coming in today. Glad you could make it. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will see